We are back on MorningLine, final segment today, talking politics and the like with our friend John Weil, MTSU political science professor. Good to have you on, Professor Weil. Talking a little presidential politics as we're going through this as well, just the budget and where it goes. Look, everything's linked to it, folks, all together. And Taylor waited through the break, so it's always good to hear from Taylor. Let's take a phone call from him. Taylor, good morning to you. Hi, Taylor.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning to the professor. It's been a while since I've talked to this great program.
It's good to hear from you.
I've got just two things I'd like to chat about. One is this budget proposal that will not cost any of us making less than $400,000 a year any increase in taxes. Now, I know most of this crowd makes more than that, but for those of us who don't, I would suggest you mark your calendar, put down what your withholdings are with this date, no matter if you make $20,000 or $70,000 or $125,000, and compare that to what it will be 6 or 8 months from now. No matter which of these budgets cost, and you will be able to determine somewhat whether it was a truthful statement, and of course that was still wouldn't handle inflation. And my only other point is, we're talking about all these elections in 2024. My sincere thought is that come election day, neither Trump nor Biden will be the two choices for president at that time. So that's
interesting.
I'm not going to pretend to suggest who it will be, but those two will not be on your ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taylor. You gave us some stuff to talk about there. Well, that's interesting. He doesn't think either one, which I didn't consider that, and I could see that possibility. Couldn't you? Potentially.
Absolutely.
I mean, Biden decides not to run, and maybe Trump decides not to, or maybe he does and does not get the nomination, and you have two completely new people.
Well, and again, there's always a possibility of a third party.
Yeah.
I don't think he has much of a chance of being president, but I noticed just yesterday, Andrew Lang, you remember, who had run for the Democratic nomination, declared, has written a new book, and he's going to use his platform to create a third party. So that's always a possibility as well. Yeah,
and it sounds to me like Taylor, and you talk about distrust, has his doubts. I mean, you've heard the president talk. I guess the number is maybe 400,000, or, the idea of this huge infrastructure increase is going to be paid for by the very rich is his point. And I think the majority of it might be, but to say that anyone making under $400,000, Taylor thinks, okay, well, let's see. Let's check your tax after this passes, if it does, and see if they go up or not.
Yeah, I would think in the short term, I really don't think he has a lot to worry about, but I could be absolutely wrong on it. I think the trickier question is, particularly if you raise corporate taxes and the like, does that have an effect on consumer prices and whatever that we might not otherwise anticipate? It's easier to tax the rich in theory than it is in practice, in part because they're wealthy enough to hire people to tell them how to avoid paying taxes.
That's exactly how it's going to work out. You talk about the consumer price index, and I think the information's already been leaked. You may have heard it as well, but the official announcement's going to come probably this month or maybe early November with regard to the cost of living increase for Social Security. And have you heard? I mean, it may be the largest increase that we've seen since the Reagan years. Could be as much as 6%. And I know a lot of that is counteracted by Medicare, and that goes up. But 6% is quite a bit. And I don't know, I guess that's an indication. Yeah, everything's costing more.
Well, a lot of this seems to be COVID related.
Yeah.
And a lot of supply chain problems. There's particular problems right now with computer chips that are used in the manufacturing of cars. And sometimes things you don't even think about. Apparently, this oil spill in California may be the result of the fact that they had all these ships lined up at the harbor, and one of them may have dropped an anchor and pull the pipeline apart.
Yep.
So the law of unintended consequences is probably one of the most underrated, underappreciated laws that there are.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's a horrible situation there in California. But yeah, I guess then, when you look at the economy and everything else, by the way, you didn't mention, what about Bernie Sanders? Is he even going to be a player?
Well, if we think that Joe Biden may be too old, then I think Bernie Sanders certainly is. I don't think that he would be. And again, you would think if you were going to go to an alternate to Biden, you would probably want someone that you thought at least had the chance for 2 terms. One of the problems with the 2-term limit on the president is the president becomes a kind of lame duck already in his 2nd term. But if he's only there for one term and only 1 term, then you don't have quite as much leverage as, I'm still here to make you miserable or reward you for 4 or 6 years from now.
Right. Anyway, you haven't said anything about the vice president. I mean, she would be an obvious choice then, right?
I think she would be. It's, in early American history, the most obvious choice was usually Secretary of State. That seemed to be the major stepping stone. But in recent years, I think it has been either the vice president, and again, governors come out fairly well in terms of being able to get nominations, and of course every senator looks in the mirror in the morning and sees a future president.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward to it, aren't you? All I can say is it would be nice, though, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, to get some younger blood in there. And I have nothing against older folks, but I mean, President Trump and Joe Biden, 2 of the oldest presidents in history, right? And I guess it's just...
I think they prefer to call themselves more experienced. But yes.
And I don't discriminate against the older folks, but that's why these issues come up. I mean, they're so much older. I'm just surprised, and I don't know how the American public, either they elect, the familiar, they really value the tradition of whatever these older candidates bring to the table. But I guess President Obama was fairly young, and so was, Clinton and Bush when they won. But we've kind of shifted now with the last 2 presidents being considerably older. I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing, but that's why these things come up. And you wonder, are there any, the next generation?
Trump is sort of the anomaly here because, yes, he's older, but he was very politically inexperienced. He's the only president, to my knowledge, who ever ran without prior military experience or elective office.
Right.
And so, that's primarily a function of how much money he had to spend on it. And, his ability to be able to capture what apparently is a sort of below the surface rage and, just they're all bums. Let's throw them all out. Ken Seiler and I wrote an article where in 2016, in which we were discussing the maxim that Mae West once made, that anytime she had to choose between the lesser of 2 evils, she chose the one she hadn't tried before, and that's sort of an explanation of how Trump came into office.
You talked about Afghanistan. I just wanted on a final note on this, just with regard to the president and former President Trump. I mean, you're right. It happened on Joe Biden's watch. But this is something that both the Republicans and the Democrats have to maybe take some responsibility for, the idea.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it was a bad idea when the president said, President Trump, I want to get us out of Afghanistan. And he made a deal or whatever, with the Taliban. I mean, I thought, I think a lot of us thought maybe it is time for us to get out of there. And Joe Biden followed up. So they were on agreement on that. Again, the way it was done. And the truth is, there may not have been a graceful way. I think there's no doubt it could have been done better. But I don't think there was any easy way. Whether or not the Afghani government folded like it did just right off the bat, or 2 or 3 weeks later, it was still going to be a bad situation with the Taliban taking over, in my opinion. But, I mean, they both have a similarity there, don't they? I mean, the 2 presidents?
They do. I think the major mistake we made there is we showed our cards too early.
Yeah.
We wanted to get out so badly, we were willing to take anything that basically the Taliban had to offer. Biden got stuck with a bad deal. And, maybe he could, I think certainly he could have done better with the deal that he had, but, either way, it was going to be messy.
Yeah. Professor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really good to see you. We will talk again, my friend, all right?
Let's do it.
All right, take care. Professor John Vile at MTSU. We'll take a break. Be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this.